Greetings and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 1.1 prerelease as we continue our career in the endeavour to become the reusable wizard, taking our space program to the stars, or at least the moon, or something along those lines, using entirely reusable technology and progressing through the career mode, science, and all of that good stuff. Of course, the moon is quite a long way away. We haven't gotten into space yet. We are still developing our technology and getting some of the early science in place. And when we left off last time around, we had just unlocked a bunch of plane parts and we had attempted some horizontal takeoff and landing as opposed to the vertical takeoff and landing we had been doing previously. Unfortunately, it could be said that the new wheel physics are still a little bit buggy. They are perhaps still in need of a little bit of tweaking because we had a great deal of difficulty even getting off the ground with them. So we decided to abandon wheels as a bad idea, and instead we have bolted these cubic octagonal struts, or something along those lines, to the bottom of our little test aircraft here, and the hope is that we can skid to a landing on these and possibly then take off again. That is my ardent hope anyway. But how do we get on? Well, let's take a look. We actually managed to get out quite far towards those mountains on the little rocket engine that we're running off of. And then as we approach for landing... I think we might do this. Come on, nail the landing. Nail the landing. Flare some more, flare some more. Cut that vertical speed. Cut it, cut it, cut it. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Treaty Kerbal! Well, the first attempt didn't go too well, to be fair, but I'm nothing if not determined. And so I take another attempt at the same landing, the same craft. I leave a little bit of fuel in the tank this time. We haven't gone quite so far. The idea is that if I can use a little bit of thrust just to maintain flight and really arrest my vertical... Oh dear, yeah. Oh no. Yeah, that didn't work either. Let's have one more try at this. We exploded, and just one more try. Okay, it's looking good this time. It's looking good. Vertical speed dropping to 0. We're actually going up a little bit now, but we are coming up to a slope. Oh, and she exploded horribly. It may not be possible to land on skids like I previously thought that it was. Maybe, just maybe, I didn't give the wheels enough of a chance. Maybe it's just on the runway that we're going to have problems with them. And actually, if we put them on and we launch vertically, and then we can just land nicely and gently on the wheels, using the wheel suspension in a horizontal manner, and then maybe we can take off again from there. That's my new plan, and by Jove, it's going to work. Well, the vertical phase certainly worked, but we seem to have some degree of flight instability with this design. I'm not entirely sure why. It may be that I messed up the aerodynamics, or possibly the center of mass when I changed the wheels over, or rather changed the skids over. But clearly, we've got a bit of a problem. However, a little bit of brute thrust is all you need to solve most problems in KSP, and in this situation, it seems to work. We get our velocity vector lined up with our wings and pointy bit of the spacecraft. I'm using all the technical terms here. I hope you're keeping notes. And we seem to be sort of more or less in control, so we can glide it in now and we can try out this landing and see if the wheels, which have been so cruel to us on the runway, are any better out in the wild. Flare, flare a bit more, flare, come on, we're down, we're bouncing, uh-oh, we're facing the wrong way, oh no, we've landed backwards, oh, it's all gone horribly wrong. You know, I think we did kind of land then, we just sort of bounced at the same time. So, undeterred by our failure, in fact our repeated failures, we press on to try and find a configuration of wheels and aircraft that will allow us to take off horizontally and indeed land horizontally. In fact, you know what? Just being able to take off horizontally from the runway wouldn't be nice. I mean, to be fair, it's kind of like this pitted, useless bit of mud. Naturally, I thought the solution might be considerably more power. But sadly it wasn't, so then I tried small and light and nimble. But that didn't work either. So, deterred, we decide to give up on the whole horizontal takeoff and landing thing as a bad idea and return to vertical takeoff and landing. But now with our newly unlocked technology, we can hopefully do a better job at that, and indeed add a horizontal flight component into the equation there. We will of course return to the horizontal takeoff and landing at some point in the future, either when the pre-release has been updated or indeed the full release has come out with some of the issues ironed out with the current wheels, or indeed when we have unlocked better wheels and presumably also, you know, paid someone to come along and tarmac that runway and make it slightly less potholed and terrible. But until then, we are going to make do with vertical takeoff and landing, and you know what? That is a good thing as far as I'm concerned, because vertical takeoff and landing is just cool, Thunderbird style. And so I present to you the Featherfall, this time named, of course, in honor of the fact that it's going to be coming down nice and gently under a parachute, and also, indeed, with a rocket-assisted landing. That's my plan anyway, touching down just like a delicate flower, just drifting gently to the ground, a delicate flower with a rocket engine attached to arrest its vertical motion just prior to landing. That's my cunning plan anyway. Let's see how it does, shall we? The Featherfall Mark II, as the case may be, it actually has a pair of jet engines attached, as you can see, and indeed wings. So we use the rocket engine just to kind of get us off the ground initially, a nice vertical liftoff. Then we're going to turn over and come into a nice controlled horizontal flight. What's going on? Oh, I don't think. Hold on. I think I might have gotten it back under control. Or perhaps not. Fortunately, of course, what we can salvage out of this is a parachute descent test to make sure that we can actually land on those brilliantly designed landing strut things. And whilst the flight characteristics of the Featherfall could probably be best described as utterly atrocious, the actual landing system, the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the Featherfall design works an absolute treat. Look at that. Without even needing to power up the jets, the parachute is able to bring us down to a soft landing on those strut landing gear things that we built. To add to the glorious roll of successes from this flight, we were able to get a little bit of science out of it as well. Checking in with R&D, we see that we can actually unlock survivability and general rocketry, both of which have interesting parts for the construction of our new vertical takeoff and landing systems. And of course, we also need to sort out the flight characteristics of the Featherfall and get it so that it doesn't just kind of spin madly out of control. We add various bits and pieces. Among the many, many very well thought out and planned improvements to the Featherfall are the swapping out of the old engine for the new Reliant rocket engine, which has a little bit better thrust and is a little bit lighter, but it doesn't have the thrust vectoring. But we don't need the thrust vectoring, right? We also move the wings back, which hopefully sorts out the flight characteristics. Unfortunately, we do butt up against the old devil of part count because we have an unupgraded runway. Our maximum part count on a vehicle is only 30, and so in an attempt to save money, or rather part count budget, I ditched a couple of the intakes from the 2 new jet engines. Obviously, we totally needed 2 new jet engines on the side as well, because more power clearly is what we were lacking for our flight control in flight when we were flying, or rather crashing. Of course, the upshot of taking off the 2 new air intakes and leaving 4 jet engines was a slight imbalance of thrust as the jet engines choked with insufficient air. Clearly a flaw. Fortunately, the engineers had over-designed the craft to the point of having 2 mystery goo canisters, when clearly we could get by with just 1, if that meant 4 functioning jet engines, which we decided was definitely what we wanted to do. So we replaced our mystery goo with a single mystery goo, stuck our 2 new air intakes on, and tried again. Now is the winter of our extreme content, for we are facing sort of the right way. We are pretty confident that we're going to have enough airflow. Let's fire up those jet engines. After waiting for some time for the thrust on those jet engines to build up to speed, we actually get liftoff. Look at this. Look at that. It actually has enough thrust to lift off just on those jet engines. Of course, we give it a little bit of a kick with the rocket engine because, yeah, it's faster that way, and it gets us up to flying speed and flying altitude that much more quickly. We also need to remember that we need to shut down the engine, the rocket engine there, separately from the jet engines, otherwise we lose all thrust. This is, of course, an important consideration. But look at it! Look at how magnificently it flies! GT Kerman there, piloting the Featherfall Mark 3 or whatever version number we have chosen to give it, and it's flying beautifully, flying just like an aeroplane. The landing strut system is slightly reduced in quality. As you can see, it's missing the 3 extra struts to give it a slightly bigger footprint, because of course they were sacrificed to the gods of the part count, who we shall appease as soon as we can afford to do so and increase our part count cost. I mean our part count limit in the spaceplane hangar there. And we'll be able to build a much better craft, a much more robust craft then. But for the time being, this is pretty good. This is doing everything that we wanted to. In fact, I think in this inaugural flight, we're going to fly all the way out there to the mountains, land vertically, of course, do a little bit of science there in the highlands, and then fly back to the Space Center for full recovery. That is the way we do things here at the Reusable Wizard Endeavour. Skipping the rather lengthy flight, we proceed to the landing zone. We are now over the highlands, and the Featherfall is preparing to make its descent. Of course, when we landed successfully before, we did so on the incredibly flat terrain around the Space Center, and now we're trying to land in the highlands, which by definition are not terribly flat. And in addition to that, we can't really pick our landing zone very accurately. Of course, we've got just sort of forward flight capability and then the ability to fall, to land, a bit like a feather, which sort of probably involves a little bit of drift. So we're going to have to get lucky here. Chutes deployed, because basically it looks like it only gets worse from here on out. In fact, I think, frankly, I've probably already left it too long, but never mind. We disable SAS so that the craft can flip itself around to its correct orientation, a procedure which I shall refer to as the feather fall activation maneuver, as we then drift down, incredibly uncannily similar to a feather, or indeed some kind of object or individual experiencing the effects of the feather fall spell. Dropping at a nice leisurely 15-14 meters per second. I really probably should have fired the jets up before now. Oh, we've actually hit the ground pretty hard. We tipped up. Oh, no! Oh, we lost the experiment thing. Look, we lost the junior science bay. But at least GT Kerman survived this one, as did the rest of the Featherfall. So, not 100% successful landing, but, you know, any landing you can walk away from, right? Let's recover the craft. So overall, I was pretty happy with the way the Featherfall performed. The only thing was possibly a little bit more stability on landing would be nice, so I do my best without adding extra parts to increase the footprint of our landing strut system. And once again, the Featherfall takes to the air under the power of its quad jet engines and that one reliant rocket engine on the back there. Firing away just to give us a little bit of extra thrust to get us off the ground. I really need to get used to look. I can actually pin this and just leave it there so that I can activate and deactivate the rocket engine. Really nice feature that in 1.1, I have to say. Kind of means you can get away without using action groups to begin with, which I think is something you actually have to unlock as well. So having access to an alternative means of doing that early on is very welcome. Back at the Highlands, once again, I've left it kind of late and gotten to the really hilly part of the Highlands, just to, you know, increase the difficulty and danger, not to mention peril, as much as possible. Hopefully these new widened struts will give us a slightly better chance of actually staying upright when we land, and also a more hands-on control using those jet engines to try and soften the landing a little bit, I think is key. Shoots out to engage the Featherfall activation maneuver. What's going on with the Featherfall activation maneuver? GT Kerman, you are not supposed to be diving headfirst towards the ground. That is not the correct maneuver. That's more like it. Okay, we got full chute deployment and the Featherfall is working correctly now. Obviously that approach pattern that I was trying out is probably not the best, but everything seems to be nice and stable now. We're just going to fire those jet engines up a little bit to cushion our landing as much as possible. I don't know if there's like a best orientation here. I'm just kind of rotating the craft to try and get the two prongs, I guess, facing kind of downhill a bit. Firing the jet engines up a little bit more. Come on, it's a little bit more. We need to slow that meters per second down to like 5 or something. Oh, no, we've hit the ground. Oh, we totally didn't orientate correctly. And we've slowed it again. Oh, okay, landing on a slope is really quite difficult. Let's try that again. After another slight adjustment to the landing leg strut things to try and widen them out a bit, I have returned to the highlands. Once again, going deep into the highlands because I guess I'm just some kind of masochist. And activating the featherfall descent procedure, kind of late this time. What are we at? 1,200 meters. I don't know where the ground actually is. It looks pretty close. But I think we're going to be fine. The procedure is complete. SAS is back on to try and keep us a little bit stable. Firing those jet engines up. Getting them roaring a little bit higher this time. Dealing with the jet lag, of course, is quite difficult in this situation because it takes a while to get the thrust in off of those engines. But we're down to 9 meters per second. 8, and we've hit the ground. Are we going to stay? Are we going to stay up? Look, we're nearly there. No, no, stay up, stay up. Got the engines. Oh, no. It was so close. It was so close. But alas, we have fallen on our sides. Now, technically, we could actually call this a success because the featherfall has remained intact. We could probably get most of our funds back, and indeed, we could even bring back a bit of science. But oh no! Oh no, this is not the nature of the reusable wizard endeavour. We'll not settle for half measures. We have to be able to land successfully in a configuration that we can take off from again so that we can return to the space center. That's the whole point, right? It's not just reusable, it's like maximum reusability. We don't want to have to send people miles off over the ground to go and pick up spaceships that are perfectly capable, or aircraft that are perfectly capable of returning on their own. So this is attempt number 2. Look, this time we're going to nail it. We're going to nail it. We're going to nail it. We didn't nail it. Oh, it fell once again. It fell at the last. We actually picked a slightly flatter landing zone here, but we still don't seem to be able to nail this landing. All right. Clearly, this is just a case of perseverance. This time. All right, it's looking good. It's looking good. We've got our speed down to 6 meters per second and falling 5 meters per second. We're down. Cut the engines. Let the parachute stabilize us. We did it! We did it! The featherfall has successfully landed in the highlands. At least, frankly, I hope it's the highlands because I don't think we could get much closer. It is a little bit flatter here, which is good. Also, I think that widened landing gear has helped a little bit. Look, let's do the science. Have we got Highlands data? Material study from Kerbal Highlands. Keep the data. Grab any other science that we can out here at the Highlands, but of course the mission is only half complete. We still have to get back to the Space Center and repeat the landing, albeit, hopefully, on much flatter ground. Simple, right? All we need to do is power up those jet engines, get them whirling up to speed, get ready to activate our rocket engine, which still has a decent lick of fuel in it to give us a kick into the air, launching off, possibly a little bit premature there. I don't think the jet engines had quite whirled up to speed. In fact, what's our speed there? 107, 106 meters per second, 110, 111. All right, we're starting to pick up speed. That's not too bad. Set a course for the Space Center. We're bringing the science home. However, with the Space Center still some distance off, disaster strikes, and somehow the featherfall enters some kind of flat spin. Am I able to pull out of it and save the featherfall and her precious, precious science? Find out next time when the reusable wizard endeavor continues. But until then, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I have been Weird Wizard, and I will see you later.